Hello everyone, this is Nayiri from Low Carb and Fasting. So our guest today is a nutrition and health researcher, and she's also the co-author with Dr. Chris Knobbe of the Ancestral Diet Revolution, where they investigate the role that seed oils have played in the destruction of human health in the past 80 to 100 years, and that's their global impact. Suzanne Alexander, welcome to Low Carb and Fasting.
Thank you for having me here. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you.
Suzanne, you are the co-author of the book. However, today we are not discussing the book. We're discussing something else that you've been up to, which is equally exciting, fascinating, interesting, if not more. So
It has been a remarkable journey, and I just love that you were there with me. I appreciated that so much.
I was with you on the African expedition. Let's tell the viewers what we're talking about.
So much to me. When I would see you were there, it meant everything to me. Thank you. You were like holding my hand. It made me. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, Suzanne. Okay, so you decided to go to two different parts of the world, meeting ancestral tribes and looking into exactly what they're eating and where their health is, and whether industrialized seed oils have penetrated into their diet.
Yes.
You first started off with the Pacific Islands. You went there with Dr. Knobbe, and that was all good and fine. You didn't report too much back from there. However, your more recent one was in Africa, the African expedition, where you went alone. And you were so brave to do it alone. But from Africa, you were actually recording short Instagram videos for the rest of us to see exactly what you were experiencing. So let's start off with the Pacific Islands. Where exactly did you go, and which tribes did you meet?
Okay, so I'll switch over to the presentation I created for PowerPoint, and then we can just, visual is really great. You can see everything. So here we go. Can you see it?
I can see it.
Excellent. Okay, so here we are. This is where we are. So what we did is, I'm very budget minded. And at this point, I was working with Chris for the foundations, and now I'm kind of branched out on my own. I just felt that, well, I'll get into that as we move on. So what we did is Chris was going to be speaking at the Low Carb Down over in Australia. And so we knew that it was kind of in the region where we really wanted to one day go to begin our investigation into the ancestrally living tribes. And because we wrote so much about the Papua New Guinea tribes that were living in our book, we wrote about their diet, which was mostly sweet potatoes. 90% of their diet was sweet potatoes. So we thought, well, it's kind of in that neck of the region. So if you look over here where my cursor is, Chris was over here. And so look at where the area is. But we weren't going to go to Papua New Guinea because I researched this, and this is my life. I delve into, and I realized that a great deal of in this region has become overtaken with the processed food and seed oils, and also tourism, and this kind of, which infiltrates into the native tribes. And it's everywhere. It's all over the world. And to try to find truly ancestrally living indigenous tribes is so difficult because they're far and few in between. They're just so becoming tourism traps. And so I realized that the tribes we had originally studied were really inundated and had gone back. Let me go back here. And so I thought, I looked and I found over in Jayapura and Wamena, especially Wamena, there was some tribes living way up high in the highlands that are still living ancestrally. And so I searched and I found guides. And this is the thing, when we're going to travel, you have to find guides because they all speak different languages. No one's speaking English except for your guides that you find. So I so we knew that we could do that one. And I said, well, there's all these other islands. Let's go to a whole bunch of islands. So Chris just kind of gave me carte blanche. He says, look, you know what you're doing. You know what, so just do what you need. So I planned out the trip. I found 7 places that we could go. But the worst part is there's not a lot of flights that go into these islands. And so that was the biggest thing. And so it took us forever. So I'm up here in Syracuse. This is where I live, in this region. And so I had to fly down to Atlanta. Then I went to LAX. Then I flew 16 hours over here to Melbourne. And then or to Brisbane. I think I was in Brisbane. No, Melbourne. I think I went to Melbourne. I don't know, wherever I flew. Then we had to fly from there. Once I got Chris there, we flew to Bali, then to Makassar, then to Jayapura. Now, Jayapura is over in Indonesia, West Papua, Indonesia. And so we had to go here first because there's a little teeny tiny airport to get us up to where Wamena is, which is high. So it's very hard to get there. So first of all, let's go through this. So these are just some of the people that we're going to meet as we go through this. So here we go. So our first stop is we went to Jayapura, and just in Jayapura, there was it was more like a city. They call it a city, but when you think of, like, I think of New York City, and it's not. It's basically where there's cars. So anything that has cars, it's kind of like a city. And so we got there, we went in, and we saw that they had seed oils there in their stores. There wasn't really indigenous living people there, but they did have a lot of processed food. But their number one selling oil was palm oil, and they actually had it. It was a huge wall, and they actually had where it said the sign, this is our most popular. I thought, I've never seen that before anywhere I've gone. This is it. Palm oil is about a 10 to 12 linoleic acid percentage on that. It's lower. It's kind of like an olive oil. However, when I was talking to Dr. Knobbe about this, I said, but look, and I went and I kept saying, he kept saying, well, it's not that bad. I said, I wouldn't put it in my body. I just don't put any oils in my body. I just don't. I never have. But so he said, well, let's look. So I looked at all of the processed food, and all of their processed food, basically the first ingredient was palm oil. Now, palm oil is also produced in that region. So the more that I'm traveling, the more I'm starting to realize is whatever the oil that's kind of made within that region, that's the oil that they gravitate towards. But so I'll get to that in a minute. I'll show you something interesting. As we go, you'll see there's a kind of falls into a plan you can see. So then we flew from Jayapura, and then we took a tiny little plane, and we went up to where we are with the Dani tribe. This is the large tribe that we went to. We went to 2 different Dani tribes while we were there. There's the large tribe and then a small tribe. You can see it's quite a large village. All of the huts are made with grass and sticks and so forth. It's a little different than when you go to Africa. Yes, it's very similar with the grass and sticks, but there you'll see that they have another component that they add to make it a little more durable. But it was beautiful weather there the whole time we were there. And the thing that's very important to think about is in these tribes, they are not sedentary. And I cannot stress this enough. I'm seeing too many people in the carnivore, low carb community saying, you can eat this diet and you really don't have to exercise. You'll be healthy. Wrong. Absolutely. I can't stress this enough, especially when you actually hear what I've got to tell you about the Maasai. We've been totally misled. This is important to know. If we're going to eat this way in any way, these people are ancestral living. They do not sit. They will sit sometimes, but they're living ancestrally. You have to move, and you will see how much effort it takes to find food and to cook their food every day. It's effort. And so they're not sitting on a screen all day. They're not sitting on a phone. They're not just watching TV. They are moving. I almost believe it's almost more important than our diet because they're moving, and they talk about this. The tribes have spoken about this. So at this point, I've asked them, we went to their tribe and we saw where they live. And I said, where would you get salt from? Because you hear so many people talking about, we have to have tons and tons of salt. Okay. I hope I can dispel this myth. Most of the tribes do not use a lot of salt. They really don't use hardly any spices. Okay. So we need to think about this. It's not prevalent. So I said, do you have a salt spring? Where do you get salt from? We climbed this mountain. Took us a long time, very steep. I loved it because I climb mountains. Chris doesn't. He also had a knee injury, so he injured his knee severely during this. So we get to the top, and what she's been carrying is this banana stalk. It's not a banana peel, but it's a banana stalk. So she peels it, and she's got a stick with her. And she's basically, I've got videos that you can actually see where she's basically taking away and manipulating the cell structure. so that when she peels the layers apart and we go into the spring, now it should be here, I don't know where it went. We go into the spring and I jump in with her and we're twisting and turning, and all of it is allowing the salt to impregnate each of the layers. And we do it for about half an hour. And of course I taste it, and it's not that much salt. It's very, very minor tasting. You can taste a little bit of it in it, but it was not really salty. So we wad it all up, we take it back, and she hangs it to dry. And what they do is they can use this, they can break off pieces and just throw it into their water as it's boiling. And that's where they get their salt from. That's how they do this. So that's their salt intake. But again, it's a lot of walking just to get this. Then, now I'm trying to see here. Let me see here. Okay, something went wrong on that one. This is in Jayapura. This is the store I was telling you about that we went into. And again, here's the sunflower oil. I don't know if you want to cut that last part out. We just did. Now, somehow that got out of order. This is the best seller in Papua New Guinea. Again, notice that notice the big size that they sell. It was very prevalent. And I did notice that the people in Jayapura, which was kind of like a city before we got to West Wamena, they weren't as slim and trim. You could see that processed food has infiltrated this region. Again, here's the Pringles can. Notice palm oil is the first ingredient. Now you're going to see Pringles cans throughout the journey because I kept going to them. And Pringles keeps modifying. Wherever they know is their oil sold, they will change their ingredient list. It's really fascinating to see. Again, this is America. This is what ours is. In the United States, we have the first vegetable oil. It is corn oil, cottonseed, olea, soybean. Look at all the sunflower. Look at the different oils we have in ours. Much more toxic. Much more toxic. Again, that was their prevalent. And so here we are. Now we're going to go, now we're at Jayapura. So now we're going to fly to Wamena. Here we are at the market. So we meet, this was our translator. His name is Rami, and he was our guide and our translator. They've got a huge market in all the places. There's beautiful markets, and they all come and sell their produce. They're very much plant-based in this region, very plant-based. And just fresh, again, there is no chemicals, nothing used. It's very ancestrally raised. There's not a lot of EMFs. I'm very sensitive to electromagnetic fields, very, very sensitive. And I just felt like my body was just I wasn't like jittery. It was wonderful. And I slept, I was sleeping. I don't sleep well. And I was sleeping for 5 hours. That's a first for me. And I was even dreaming. It was really amazing. So EMFs to me, it's another thing to think about. It's powerful. So here's again, the tribe in the large tribe. You'll see, yes, because I can get taken down a lot on social media because of this tribe does not wear a lot of clothing. And this is how they are. It's very ancestral. And the women just wear like a grass skirt. They're bare on top. The men only wear a kotika. A kotika is like a gourd, and it's whatever shape that they like that goes over their private release. And then they have like 2 strings that just hold it on. That's all they wear. At first it was a little like, oh, okay. But the more I was with them, then you forget about it. You just kind of don't even think about it. This is the chief over here. This is Chief Mabel. This is different than the other tribes in Africa. This is the family. It just keeps being passed on, passed on. It's in the genes. If you look over back at this one, look at this. See this right here? This is a 370-year-old mummy. And this is the Dugan clan. And he is a celebrated mummy. He's Wimtok Mabel. So this is the great grandfather of the new chief that's there now. This is from the 18th century. So again, this is the chief. Notice that some of them they're starting to incorporate wearing regular clothing. They are. Over here, look at the children. The children's stomachs, I said to Chris, look at their descended stomachs. Their abdominal region is descended. That's a really good indication that they have kwashiorkor disease, and it's basically malnutrition, lack of protein.
Right.
Yeah. And so again, remember, they're mostly plant-based. Most of their diet is sweet potatoes with some cabbage. There's fruit everywhere. Fruit absolutely everywhere you go. It's just wildly growing. But sweet potato is their prize. They will eat pork or chicken, maybe once or twice a month, but not a lot, because the pork is is their prize. The village is called, the whole town that they're living in is called Wamena. Wam in the Dani language means pig. That's how revered it is. They've actually named their area, their region after the pig. Okay, here we are up. Now we climbed that mountain we talked about. This is what we jumped into the spring. And this is how we are getting the salt to go into the layers of the banana stalk. And we kept twisting and turning and twisting and turning. And it was just so neat to experience. This is what they do. This is ancestral living. This is the second tribe I went to. Now, this day I went alone because Chris had injured his knee climbing the mountain to get to the spring. And so I went on my own. And so Rami and I went. And this is lovely. The women, again, not a lot of clothing. This is their kitchen. This picture over here is their kitchen. And you can see that, you know, they've got a fire going, and this is where they do their cooking. And mostly they're going to be cooking is their sweet potatoes. Now watch what it takes to make the sweet potatoes, to cook them. So we go out and they're using a plain old stick. This is their ancestral tools, and they're digging up. They've got every color of potato, sweet potato you can imagine. They go down, there's like this little spring area, and they wash the plants and things that we're going to be cooking. We go back, we have to go out and we have to gather. Now, this is taking most of the day. We have to go and go down the hill. We collect all the greens, collect all the sticks, all the things to make the fires. Then we come back, they have two fires they have to make. One fire over here is going to be heating the stones. They're going to be cooking with stones. And so that takes forever for them to build this and again, they're making the fire the old-fashioned way. Then while they're doing that, we're over here, there's another pit. This is for the earthen oven pit. And we line this with all of the greens that we had collected earlier in the day. Layers and layers and layers. And of course, I here I'd studied this, but to actually go and do it, I was like, this is amazing to watch. So then they go, because I'm there, they think it's a celebration. It's time for celebration. So he goes and he picks a pandan fruit. Now, I'd studied the pandan fruit because it's one of the most supposedly nutrient dense, huge phytonutrients, so many wonderful antioxidants that are supposedly healing. So I see it, and the only thing they're going to use is the outside seeds. There's a whole bunch of seeds. I'm so fascinated to see what they're going to do with this. So while he's preparing this, and he's got his kotika on, it looks like he has pants on, but he doesn't. He's taken pig fat with ash and so forth, and they paint that on their lower region. That's either during a celebration or to go to war. And so because I was there, he felt it was to honor me. And I was very humbled by that. And so here they've taken their homemade grasping tools. These stones are blazing, scorching hot, and they're picking them up after they've been cooked, and they put them in the bottom of the earthen oven pit. Then they look at the different colored sweet potatoes they've got. All different, hundreds of them. And then they put more stones on top. Then on top of that, they put a little bit of green, and then they put the pandan fruit on top of that. Then they wrap all those greens around the top of it, and you can see they've made like this dome. It's like a big convection oven type thing. And it's steaming. All of the greens, the water in the greens are steaming the plants. It's brilliant how they use ancestral thinking. It's brilliant. So at that time, I said, well, how long will this take? And they tell Ronnie about an hour. They said, let's go in the hut and sit. Now, here's a key thing. They're heavy smokers. They smoke so much. And there's now smoking cigarettes from like what the companies from America are eating. They're no longer smoking the cigarettes that they normally would have grown their own tobacco. And there is some science that say, now I'm part Native American, and so my ancestors would have been smoking like the peace pipe and so forth. But of course they wouldn't inhale it. They would just, there's research saying that there is benefit to natural tobacco, that it has special healing properties. They're no longer doing that. They're now smoking the cigarettes and they're inhaling, they're doing. So I'm interested to watch their health, what's going to be happening with them over the next few decades. Will we start to see cancer? They do not. They've been smokers. We wrote about this in the book. They are heavy smokers. And we also wrote about that in their huts that they're using, I'll go back, in their huts that they're cooking everything, and the smoke is just billowing in there. Plus they're smoking at the same time, but they don't have emphysema. I noticed when we were hiking, they're still smoking while we're hiking. There was no coughing, no wheezing, nothing. Unbelievable health. Unbelievable health. And Rami's almost 70, and he didn't get tired, nothing, but he was smoking immensely. So here we go. Let me go down here. This was interesting. This, I found all these little shacks everywhere, and they're all over, in all the islands, even in Africa, and they're selling all the processed food. And they're very close to where the tribes can walk to. So this is where they can get their cigarettes. If they want to start adding seed oils, if they want candy, they want to get potato chips. But there's also all they'll have feminine hygiene products if women want to go to that maybe altering to be changing their diet, their ways. These women, when they have their period, they would go to a special hut during that time, and that's where they just go for that week. But if they want to change and start to add in the feminine hygiene products and so forth, they're available here for them. So there are some good things available. I mean, some people may say that's not, because they're filled with chemicals too, you know? But they'll also have clothing and diapers and things like that. So interesting, but they did have seed oils there. They did. So again, we visited the stores in the region, and their palm oil was the key oil that they're using. I asked the tribes there, are they using them? Some of them were like, no. And some of them said, well, sometimes. And you could kind of tell that some of them were not as pristine. I also noted that their teeth, that's one of the first things I always look. I was studying to be a dentist at one point, and I always look at people's teeth because I think that's a sign of health, because that's the beginning of our digestive system. And many of them didn't have teeth. They only had a few teeth left. And I asked if they brushed their teeth, and they said no. And, you know, and a lot of people say you don't have to brush their teeth. Wait till we get to see what happens in Africa. It's so neat. I've been able to see different ways of what works and what doesn't. So I don't know. Is it because that they're more plant-based, that they aren't getting the wonderful fat soluble vitamins A and K2? Can't say D because they're in the sun all the time. They're getting plenty of D, but the K2 and vitamin A are so important. I know everyone talks about, well, there's vitamin A in plants. Well, that's not the true vitamin A. That's not retinol. So it doesn't, many of us can't even convert to that. So we would not be getting that what we get from animal products. I think that's important. I really do. So that was an important part for me. Then we went and we flew to Honiara, Solomon Islands. This took us about 36 hours to fly there. We had to go to 5 different airports just to get here. And so we finally got there. And at this point, the going up and going down, we were both having ear problems, but I ended up having some major ear problems because of that flight. And I'll tell you later. This is what we were greeted to. I was like, oh, it almost brought me to tears. We're seeing that this is how they met us at the airport. I thought it was beautiful. It was exciting, you know, it was just wonderful. This is the kind of store. Now, Honiara, it was very difficult to find people living tribally still. It's very difficult. We went out into the bush and we found families that were living out there, but they had regular homes. They didn't have running water. They had like tanks that would collect rainwater, but they were growing, you know, very, very plant-based, A lot of food, again, sweet potatoes. So this region, very, very big with sweet potatoes, taro, cassava, very big. But they were also adding in fish, because they're not high up in the highlands now. Of course, the Deni tribe would not have fish because they aren't near the water. They're up in the mountains. But of course, they had the pig and the chicken. These people here, they will have fish. But I asked them, well, do you eat a lot of fish? And they said, well, we eat a lot of canned fish. And I said, canned fish? You're right here. And they said, it's too expensive. We can't afford it. So then I looked at Dr. Knobbe and I said, I'm concerned. He said, why? And I said, because mark my word, their canned fish is probably in seed oils. Now, Chris doesn't buy canned fish. I sometimes will get sardines if I'm traveling, but I always make sure it's in spring water. And he didn't know this. He didn't know that there was something like that. So I had to educate him about that. So we started looking and we started finding most of their canned tinned fish was in soybean oil. And so I thought, oh, that's not good. And again, notice how the oils, it's not a big, huge wall, but they've got, and their key was palm oil as well. Palm oil was another key thing. So we were talking with a lot of the people there, and they really believe that oil is healthy. They've been led to believe, like most of us, oh, it's heart healthy. It's so, it's so easy. It's right there. We don't have to worry about it. So I thought that was very interesting to see. And we see this across. Now, Samoa, I couldn't wait to get to Samoa. I studied them for a long time. I knew that they're this statuesque, they're so tall, and just, you just think of them as very athletic type of people. So we got there, and again, we see this beautiful, the produce everywhere, fresh, all naturally better than organic. I mean, just so unbelievable. When we were eating the fruit, I could not believe how different it was from our fruit. So different tasting, just the energy it was so, even compared to our organic fruit, because our organic fruit still does have, toxins put on them. Don't anyone tell you it's not. These were unbelievable. So our guide, Poe, took us to meet Livingston. He's about 82 years old, and they live pretty close to traditional, but they have incorporated some seed oils. And you can tell by their build. Okay, they do have the extended, you'll see they're getting a little large, and his nephew is the same. They do not have kitchens. Their kitchen is outside. All the cooking is done outside traditionally. Everything you see is his yard. This is what his family has lived in forever. They've kind of updated a little with a regular roof on it now. But over here, this is the kitchen, right? This is the kitchen. This is what they cook. All of this is all produce and fresh fruit and coconuts. This is what they really gravitate towards. This is the outdoor kitchen. And in this pot, we have a sea eel. And here we have, I believe it was cassava leaves. And they're both, here's the important point that I always was, I was going by research. I'm a researcher, and coconut oil, they're going to be using coconut oil. I asked every single region that we were in, how often do you use coconut oil? And they all said, we don't. I said, you don't? And they said, no, we use coconut milk or coconut cream. I said, well, we've been told to use coconut oil. No, the only time we use coconut oil is on our skin or our hair. So I thought that was really interesting. So everything is freshly made. They do everything so fresh. And it was just so beautiful. Here, this is Norman. He was showing us how they are going to make the coconut milk and coconut cream. So they have a little bench they sit on, they scrape it, it goes into the pan, and then they have like a grass, they squeeze it out. And I've got videos on all of this you can see. You probably see them. And of course, I'm allergic to coconut. But I promised Chris I was going to try, and no matter where I go, even though I'm very sensitive and allergic to a lot of plants and things, I'm just going to be grateful and eat whatever I'm given, and God will help me to deal with whatever I have. So I drank the coconut water. It was so delicious. It was so fresh, so untainted. It was just beautiful. And they drink this regularly, and it's loaded with electrolytes. It's loaded. It's beautiful.
Did you have a reaction?
I'll tell you. I'm 5'8". I weighed 112 pounds when I left. And when I returned, I weighed 105. So I had ongoing diarrhea because I was struggling with a lot of the food that we were eating, but it is what it is. I mean, my body will deal with it. If I deal with this my whole life, it's you deal with it. It is. So this is what they made for us. The neighbor next door, because they don't really have chickens and things, but so they catch the wild birds. There was a dove. The neighbor caught a dove, and they cook that on the open fire. And so here's the dove here in this basket that they made. Then there's the fresh coconut water. Over here is a fresh caught sea eel cooked in their homemade coconut milk. Then we've got the leaves, the taro leaves that are cooked in the homemade coconut milk. Then over here, I've always studied about the breadfruit. I couldn't wait to try it. They're breadfruit and they're green banana. Now they're in Africa, it's called matoke, I believe. I think it's more like a plantain. I really believe it's like a plantain, and they really love these. I found it to be very starchy, very, very, they cook it not very long. It was hard. It didn't have a lot of flavor. And of course, then the breadfruit I heard so much about, but it was lovely. This is so cool. It's their cocoa Samoa, and they all grow cocoa beans. And so they take the cocoa bean and they grind it down, and they make, it's like a tea, but I thought almost tastes like hot chocolate. And of course, I'm allergic to chocolate too. So I was like, oh no, I'm gonna get migraines. So I just took a little sip of this because I couldn't, if I get a migraine, that's not a good thing. So I just took a little sip, but it was delicious. But this is something they just pride. They have pride in this coco Samoa. So that was our meal. The seal was the eel was a lot of bones. It was very moist, but there was so many little tiny little bones. I just kept picking the bones out. It was neat to try, but it was just interesting. But it's loaded in nutrients. I mean, it's huge in so many important nutrients, and I can see why they're consuming it. Again, their ancestral diets, they know what they need, and that is very powerful. It's amazing what's in the eel. This is what we found in Samoa. Look at how big their wall of oil is compared to what we saw in Honiara. Theirs, again, it was palm oil. However, soybean oil was used extremely heavily in this region when I was speaking with the people there. Their fish, again, they all were saying they don't buy fresh fish, it's too expensive. So, and they love fish, but they eat a lot of tinned and packed in soybean. And I could see why they're getting larger now, because they're no longer eating fresh, they're getting the canned. So if guys, if you love the tinned fish and sardines, those kinds of things, they're great. They've got calcium, they've got so many wonderful nutrients in them. Get them in spring water or water. Spring water is better. It's so much healthier for you. Please, there's so many that are in oils. Some will say olive oil, but we don't know. 70% of olive oil is like impregnated with other things. I wouldn't even go there. Coconut oil, again, is rarely used. It's mostly coconut milk, even more than coconut cream, I found. It was really, really eye-opening, really eye-opening. Our next place was Vanuatu. This was unbelievable. What a difference. You can see when a region understands health and is prized to them, because it really shows in everything that they do. So we went to this tribe. They were beautiful. Absolutely. Their teeth were beautiful. Their skin, if you noticed on the Dani tribe, their skin was sagging and hanging a lot. It didn't have that plumpness. And it just, this tribe, this elderly man, he's about my age, and we spent a lot of time with him. He's one of their warriors. He actually walked to show, in a lot of the tribes, their traditions are to show that you're a man, that you're brave and strong and powerful, that you can do certain things. Their way of doing it is to walk on hot coals. And to watch him walking, I was like, golly, that's gotta hurt. But they're able to totally tune it out, and they just deal with it. It's amazing. And so there's a lot of videos I have with him on showing how, his hair and skincare, his teeth, how he takes care of his teeth. They do brush their teeth, and they use the coconut skin. And I think, here he is walking on the coals here. And look how beautiful. Just their skin, they just radiate. They're glowing. They're just glowing, just glowing. This is where he's showing how he brushes his teeth. And he uses a coconut. He shows him ripping into this coconut. I mean, it would just, normally it would be like your gingival tissue would be bleeding. He was just, and he's scrubbing his teeth with the skin of that. Amazing. But think about it. Think of the antimicrobial components that we hear about in coconut. It's so ancestral, so ancestral. It was just remarkable to see what they've got this wisdom.
That's
And
how
here he
we
is.
brush our teeth in the village, asking the skins of a coconut.
Isn't that remarkable?
Oh my God.
Oh, this. Oh, wow.
This is unbelievable.
Isn't it amazing? It's just
Wow.
amazing.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Did you try that?
Yes, but it was very invigorating. And I do it sometimes. I mean, if I see a coconut here at the store, I'll just say, I just want to just because I know it now, and it's fun to do things like that. But I do mostly what the Maasai do, so which I'll show you in a minute. This is what has become my go-to now, because their teeth were just, oh. So anyway, again, in Vanuatu, it was so amazing when we went to the store. Yes, palm oil was prevalent. However, my first go-to thing is to go look at their fish, because they all said that they can't afford the fresh fish, but they had a huge section of tinned fish with spring water. The other stores didn't. And the people in this region were so fit and trim. There was not a lot of obesity. In Samoa, almost every person was obese. It was shocking to see. We went and we sat in and I just said, Chris, let's just sit here and just watch. I just want to see. And we sat for quite a while, and we kept watching and watching, and they were all so just hobbling around. It was so sad because recently they were so healthy, but now they're one of the most, they have the highest percentage of diabetes. It's shocking, you know, to see that, to go from ancestral living and then to westernized, and this is what's happening. It's shocking. And I noted with the children were very thin looking, but once the girls hit puberty, they really started blowing up. They really started getting very large. The boys stayed thin until mid-20, about 23, 24. And then we started seeing their weight going on. So I don't know if it's hormonal for the girls. I don't know what was going on, but it was very interesting to see that happening. The next one, we were supposed to go to the island of Tanna, which I was so excited because there's a very small tribe living there. And in this one, you'd have to take a very small little plane to get there as well. But that whole week, they kept canceling the flights and we couldn't get there. So I was so disappointed. There was one flight that said they would have taken us, but it was so tiny. Chris was not hip on that. He goes, I'm not big on that small of a plane. I was like, I'll go alone. But I stayed back, so I didn't go. But one day I will go back myself to Tanna. Then we went to Fiji. Chris got very sick on the plane there. There was a man sitting next to him who was coughing. And I kept saying, oh no, I hope that that's not something bad. And he caught it. And so he stayed back and I went on my own and toured Fiji. This is the settlement I went to in this region. It was the first Fijian settlement that was built a couple of thousand years ago. And so I wanted to see, are they still living ancestrally? Now, if you look what this arrow is, there's a person standing out here and they're collecting the clams and the oysters and so forth. And I just thought, oh, how neat to be able to go out and do that every day. That would be beautiful. So I noticed as soon as we pulled up, I noticed that they're no longer in their huts anymore. It's very much become contemporary. And every person I met was either overweight or obese, And I was going to take pictures, but I just felt it's not, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So I'm not going to show those pictures. But again, it was sad to see. And I asked the women that I was spending most of the time with, I said, you know, do you use seed oils? And they were so proud to tell me that they were, because I think in their minds, again, they're thinking it's great. I said, well, what kind? And they said, soybean. I said, soybean. And they go, why? And so I explained to them, I tried to give them a little education, but then they said, but we also use mustard seed. And I said, well, mustard seeds, it's better. It's between like about a 12 to 15 linoleic acid. But I said, just go back to using coconut, you know, milk and those things. Go back to ancestral living, you know. And they were so appreciative of the information I shared with them because they didn't know. And again, they had the small little shacks all everywhere near all the locations where the people were trying to live ancestrally. And again, notice the oil, soybean. Then I said to my guide, I said, I know that there is a place here where I could go and talk with a monk. And I said, I've always wanted to see, what do monks really eat? And so he said, let's go. So we went there. I didn't know they would speak to me. I didn't know. And here he is. This is priest or monk Deepak. And this is one of his associates. And he was my age. I'm 62. He's right about my age. And look how lean he is. Now, this is how his day is. I would be starving living on this diet. He gets up every morning at 4:30. He starts the day with a cup of warm water because he feels that flushes the toxins and it balances his body. After morning prayer, he'll eat an orange. Then for lunch, he will have either white rice, dal. Now, dal is like a lentil that has been, the outer coating has been taken off, and it's very healing. When I was vegan and I was very, very sick, and I would eat a lot of dal to try to help to heal. And then and then he'll have yogurt. I think this is a saving grace, the yogurt, because the cow, they revere the cow and the milk, and he would take care of the cows during the day. He said it was a very important part of his day. But that yogurt, I think, is a big piece to where he's getting, you know, the K2 and all the important fat soluble vitamins he needs. Then at 3 p.m., he has 1 cup of black tea. For dinner, his raw tea, flour pudding with curry, beans, okra, eggplant. Again, and I said, aren't you hungry? He said, no. And then at 11:30, he'll have another cup of warm water, and then it starts all over again the next day. So that's his diet. But he looked very much to me, very much like a Maasai, very lean, thin, trim, but not eating a lot. But he does, so I can't say he's vegan. he's got the milk, the dairy in there, that piece is there, which I think is a very key to his health. I do. This was the biggest wall of seed oils I saw in any of it was mostly all soybean. There was a small, I have a video of this too. There was just a small section of the mustard seed, but it was, I could not believe how much soybean oil was in this region. And the people were quite large in Fiji, those who were living there, not the tourists, but the Fijians who are still living there. Yeah, it's definitely infiltrated there. So again, it's the same thing here. Soybean is 53% LA, canola, 21%, mustard, 12 to 15. I think we're just better off just eating as our ancestors eat, which you'll see more when we get to Africa. This is what happened to us. Everyone says, oh my gosh, you live such a glamorous life. No, it's far from glamorous.
I saw that photo about your legs and I thought, oh.
It was, I mean, because I have to tend to my land and there's always poison ivy. So I get poison ivy. This was worse. I don't know. A lot of the locals kept saying, is it just mosquito bites? And I said, it was the burning, the itching, the pain. It was just horrendous. And so, Chris was putting some salve on my legs, and because if I touched it, I was so afraid, what's with poison ivy? I'm going to spread it all over me. And he goes, well, I'm not allergic to poison ivy, so I can touch it. And I thought, what if it's scabies? I mean, we just didn't know what it could be because there's so many things you can get when you're there. We didn't know, but it took about a month to go away. And I don't really have a lot of scarring left from that. So that wasn't too bad. So with Chris, he had the injured knee. Then I had the skin thing that happened the whole time. Then I had ongoing diarrhea. Chris then came down with severe lung infection. And then I lost part of my hearing in my left ear because of the constant flying that we were doing up and down. It's slowly coming back, but not completely. But I'm just grateful that I've got one ear that I can hear from. So it's not, and we didn't even live with the tribes. We were, I'm budget minded. So we were staying in some low budget places, that you might see a rat here and there, you might see, who knows what. And so we weren't living like I was in Africa. And that was my dream. Chris, he's not one that wants to live right there because, as he says, roughing it to him is being in the Holiday Inn. And when you see what I had to deal with in Africa, most of you would probably say I could never do that. So here we go. Now we head to Africa.
Right. Let's go. If you can just stop the screen share.
Sure.
I'll ask you a few questions before we move to the
Absolutely.
expedition. Okay, so you noticed a lot of seed oils have obviously penetrated into their sort of diet. How about sugar? Other than like processed sugar, other than the sugar from potatoes and fruits.
I did not see them. It's the fruit and even the fruit. It didn't seem, because when I was in Vanuatu and I was with the people, the tribe there, and I said, what would be a typical day of eating for you? And it was interesting because, again, they were much more robust as they're aging, their teeth, everything was, he said their main food, 50% would be fish. So every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner was fish. And I said, about how much? And he was showing, there's a video y'all can see there. It's about like the portion of a hand, a small fish, he said. And then they would have that for breakfast with maybe taro. So taro is like a sweet potato. And then at lunch, they'd have that again, fish with taro. And then at night, fish with maybe a banana. So he's getting plenty of protein, fat, beautiful fats and so forth. They're getting their fat soluble vitamins. They're getting a lot of wonderful nutrients and also a ton of minerals in their plants. Now, then we've got everyone who's concerned about the toxins and the oxalates in the sweet potatoes. And I struggle with that because I've had a lot of problems, and I worked so close with Sally Norton when I was vegan for decades, and she helped me to get off of being a vegan. And then I worked with her and Paul Saladino to become a carnivore for a year. And so I realized how I was just so filled with oxalates and all the other poisons I had been ingesting for so long. And so I've been asking myself and researching this over and over, how can these tribes, and even in Africa, many of them live heavily on these high oxalate tours, including the Hadzabe. And this is my belief. I believe that we are, because of how we are living in terms of the water that is coming out of our faucets is loaded with chemicals And every time if you're swallowing your tap water, that's killing off your gut microbiome. We've got glyphosate everywhere. Everywhere. I've been trying so hard to keep myself away from all toxins for most of my life. And I'm always doing blood work on myself to test myself. And I had my oxalate level tested and it came back very high. And here I don't use any chemicals. I don't consume any, I don't think I'm good, but we're breathing it in wherever we go. Even again, organic food, they do use pesticides, they use chemicals, and it's now allowed. And so I believe our gut microbiome is a piece to this. I believe that when I became a vegan and was no longer getting the calcium that I needed, I was not able to flush because calcium helps to usher the oxalates out of our body. However, but then I take that theory and I go, but wait, but they don't consume. There was no dairy used at all in the Pacific Islands. They do not consume dairy. And so the only thing I'm thinking is, and when I was there, I felt it. There's no chemicals. The EMFs, I think EMFs are very destructive to our bodies as well. And I think it's just horrible what it's doing. It's so pure and clean. Their food is so pristine that I believe that their gut microbiome, that they've got, I can't remember, it's formigin, I don't know, it's a special microbe that lives in many people who are very healthy that actually will degrade oxalates and remove it from the body. And I know I've had myself tested. I don't have that. And so I'm wondering if those of us who are living in our world, we are struggling with this oxalate piece. Number one, we're eating way too many. I mean, we're making these, you know, if you're vegan and you're making all your smoothies and all, you know, I'm going to drink pounds and pounds of kale and all this stuff. Oh my gosh, I was doing that. It's too much. It's overload. You don't see these people doing that. They would eat, you know, two sweet potatoes a day, maybe, or taro or cassava, you know, and then they're doing the other, you know, like cabbage and things like that, that they're eating boiled cabbage and so forth. But I do wonder if that's another piece to this. But again, to see the difference between the two big tribes I spent with, I found that the tribe that was consuming the fish, and they said sometimes chicken, but mostly it is the fish, their health, they just seemed aging beautifully, robust. The other group was aging rapidly. Their teeth was not in good condition. But again, they smoked heavily. The tribe in Vanuatu did not smoke at all. So there's a difference in lifestyle, you know, but movement wise, they were all very, very active. And that was very important.
And also the social part, right?
Absolutely.
That community around them.
And that's something I'm writing.
Which we don't. So.
And I'm writing huge about that because I found that when I was, especially in Africa, I could not believe the love. Everyone thinks of the Maasai as just being the warriors, and which they are. But the community, we'll talk when we get there, it was the most profound thing I've ever seen in my life. And I think that that's part of why they are so majestic and so pristine. It was just, and you see, I know, because you've seen it all. It was just unbelievable. And anyone who hasn't seen the videos and heard us talking, it was just overwhelming to see them. And yet I could sense it here with these tribes, but because I wasn't living though, and so many people who say that they're going to see the tribes, they were there. If you don't live with them 24/7, then you don't know, because you don't become part of them. You don't see and hear everything that they're doing. And it was profound. It was absolutely, I felt I was a Maasai. They accepted me as a Maasai. They kept telling me that I was their white Maasai, and that they want to adopt me. So I'm probably going to go back and become a Maasai.
And it was powerful because we also could live it.
Yes.
From this side of the screen, we could live that experience with you. I mean, it wouldn't have been as effective if you came back home and then you published a paper of 80 pages on it.
Yes.
It doesn't have the same impact.
So it did mean a lot to you. So it did. I knew that you were always there, and I thought it must be powerful to you. And those who kept showing up, I thought I've got people that it mattered to, you know, and so you could feel it.
I put my notifications on. So
I
every
saw you. Every time I can see, I go, oh my gosh, I can say hi to you.
it would beep,
And then-
and then it's 11 p.m. here, and I go,
Oh.
never mind. I'll
Oh,
join.
you were so
11
beautiful.
p.m.
Oh my gosh, thank you. But it meant everything to me. I'm telling you, because I was scared. I was very, very scared the entire time, even though I had the most amazing team with me. But it was very, very scary because you're living in the bush. You have no protection. There are cobras, there are pythons, there are wild animals, there are just, you don't know, poisonous insects. And you have to go out, and we'll talk as we go through the slides. You'll see. I'll wait till we go through the slides.
Let's go. Let's have a look where
All right.
exactly we went in Africa. Do you have a
Absolutely.
map?
Oh, I have our map, so let's bring that up again. Share.